What are those two industries that you say have been are most vulnerable these days, and why is it?
Yeah, so the two industries that we've really flagged as the most vulnerable to ransomware attacks in particular are healthcare and manufacturing. And there are a couple of reasons for that, and they stem from their low tolerance to disruption. So healthcare, for example, there was that mass shift to telehealth last year, and that really wasn't coupled with sufficient cybersecurity controls. The value of medical data is only rising, and it's becoming a very lucrative target for cyber criminals. And so when healthcare attacks could result in the loss of access to patient data or vital medical technology, healthcare facilities are really forced to pay that ransom immediately. And then within manufacturing, we really have seen that digitalization has acted as a double-edged sword. That investment in automation, manufacturing technology has increased the attack surface area. And one trend that we've seen within ransomware is attacks occurring much higher up in supply chains. And that really makes the manufacturers a lot more vulnerable to attacks.
So do you have a blueprint for the ways companies can defend themselves or fight back? And we will get to, I promise, a couple of the other points you want to make about how to do that. But give me a blueprint on how to fight back.
Sure. So I think the main thing with ransomware is that the threat landscape is evolving so rapidly that preventing attacks entirely is almost impossible. And I think this year has really shown that. But what we look at with this report is a much broader approach to digital security by looking at ways to deter attacks, disrupt them, and really prepare companies to minimize that disruption. And the three things that we point out are digital identities, cryptocurrency regulation, and cybersecurity investment in a more strategic and targeted way.
Anushka, so I think one of the things investors have to think about is if this changes the economics of investments in these areas, in healthcare manufacturing, for instance. So with hospitals, which we don't think of as running very high profit margins, it feels in a way unfair to them. They're tasked with life and death situations, and yet they're getting these ransomware attacks. So how much are they likely to have to spend on all of these new technologies in order to make sure that doesn't happen? And what does that mean for investors on the other side of the equation?
Absolutely. I think for companies that clearly have had funding constraints in the past, investing in full security teams is difficult, and partnering with cybersecurity third-party providers is a great solution. But you're right, funding does come into that. And I think the point here is that, are you making those investments in a clever and strategic way? And what we've seen in the past is many companies and many industries have already invested in cybersecurity, and it's proven insufficient. So what we argue in the report is to really conduct that supply chain analysis and understand where the materiality is, and making sure you're really delegating that funding into the correct places. And I think one of the main ways to do that is to have the proper governance in place. And that's where our discussion on security leaders really comes into that.